It's not in your eyes. It's not in your eyes. Family, fascination, romantic expectations, with a duty to perform for a
The
man.
Raincoats are a British experimental post-punk band that is mostly female or entirely female-led, and has been over the years. It was formed in 1977 by Anna De Silva and Gina Birch after they saw the Slits perform and realised that on the grounds of that, I thought, actually, you know what, women can make music, and I think they're absolutely right, of course. They were kind of in the punk scene, but they're musically not particularly punk. They're also unusual for a lot of female-led stuff, not trying to be overtly sexy. They were highly regarded for their experimental approach, although critics were mixed in their opinions, and they've had quite a large turnover of members. They've had two stints of existence. So 1977 to 1984, which is 7 years, produced 3 albums, and then they reunited in 1993 and are still going. So that's 30 years, during which time they've released 1 album. Hi, my name's Dan. So this was the second album by the Raincoats. It's my first encounter with them, so I've never heard the album before. And it's one of these albums where comparisons are difficult and descriptions are difficult because it's quite unusual. So there's quite an empty and unusual approach to the music. There's lots of use of ethnic and orchestral instruments. There's a special prominence of violin here. And it's got a kind of, at times, a Velvet Underground feel, but especially that's with the violin. But also, the singing is kind of, it has a similarity to Nico from Velvet Underground and Nico days. It's got a post-rock kind of chamber feel at times, but it's way ahead of that in terms of years. Mostly because it's got this non-rock attitude, but also because of the strong use of these orchestral instruments. There's odd rhythms, there's odd bars, there's odd structures, there's odd harmonies. Sometimes it's quite discordant. Not everything is always in tune. Especially the singing sometimes has some issues there. I think sometimes I'd call it issues and sometimes I'd call it deliberate for effect. The voice is interesting because you wouldn't think that this was it's not a strong voice, or it doesn't seem so. It's actually not that bad, but it's got this kind of vulnerability and sweetness to the quality, this kind of naive feel to it. Which is obviously just the nature of her voice, but actually this is part of the appeal of this, is this somewhat unusual voice. It all feels planned, but the overall effect is a little bit like, I'm going to reference The Residents here, because it's just unusual and experimental, but it feels more planned than their stuff ever has to me, and it feels more skilled than some experimental stuff does. It's kind of a bit on the lo-fi end. I feel like they would be better described as an art collective, just in the way they approach music. It's the sort of thing that I've heard from, it's not really similar to anything, but it's the sort of out of the norm that I've heard from things that call themselves collectives often. It's not aggressive in any way, which is why in some ways it's a bit odd that it's kind of somehow in the punk world. Because punk is, if it's anything, it's aggressive. But it isn't, it's just counter. It's just, unusual, avant-garde. So despite the fact that it's a bit of a mess, I quite liked it. I enjoyed listening to it. Would I seek it out again? I think there's a chance that I would. And it was, I was surprised and I was mildly impressed by it. So, as always, at this point, I would like you to tell me what your thoughts, your opinions, your reminiscences, your knowledge, if anything, of this band and of this album. In the comments section. It's great when we get stuff going, and that's it from me for now.